So I'm going to talk to you about the exam that you've just done and go through some of the different points. First question asks you what the term population is, and as it says here, it's correct. The population is the number of people living in a set area. Next question asks you for some definitions. Population density is the number of people in a set area, square kilometres. The distribution is how people are spread over the world. Sparsely populated is areas with not many people and a low density. Densely populated is an area with lots of people, so high density. The next question asks you to annotate the map, and really annotate means that you've got to describe, but you've also got to explain. So lots of people managed to identify areas that were dark, which were high density, and light, which were low density. But when you're thinking about reasons, an example here, Canada, the reason that there's not as many people there is that a lot of the area is very cold. There's a lot of forest areas, so it's not as easy for people to live. Somewhere like China with a high population, yes, there's a lot of people living there, but that's partly because it's got good access, communications, flat, fertile land. So you've got to think about the reasons why people actually choose to live there, and it'll be what are the good things about it or what are the bad things. Areas with lots of good things going for them are going to be more attractive than areas that don't. The next question, a fairly short one, asks you about the map, and it said, how does it show population distribution? This is a choropleth map, so it's by colour shading. Darker areas show more. The next question, another describe and explain question, was about the UK's population and identifying, well, describing and explaining what it showed. So if we have a look at it, we can see that there are some areas that are really dark. So these are the big cities, and the lighter areas tend to be the countrysides. So again, that's description. If we're explaining, we've got to say why there's more people living in the cities, and that would be things like good transport, work opportunities, available land, things to do, and why less people live in the countryside, less things to do, not so good transport, less job opportunities, things like that. If we then come on to the next question, it's about the demographic transition model, and it asks you to match the stage. This is essentially a quick question, but a lot of people made a mistake with this. Italy would be in stage 5. They have got a declining population because their death rate is now higher than their birth rate because people have made children. Kenya and Ethiopia, you could put in stages 2 or 3. It does depend. I would have given you the marks for either of those because they are developing nations. And Iceland would be in 4 or 5 really because they're a developed country, but they might be going into stage 5 because their population is starting to go down because it's a similar situation to Italy. The only difference with Iceland is they've got a lot of migration. Well, not a huge amount, but compared to the population, it is really big. If we look at the next page, we can see that we've got a population pyramid. Here, really, I'll have to draw this. The population pyramid should actually look a bit more like this on both sides, because those young people down here in 30 years' time will have become much older. We don't know whether they'll have less children. It's difficult to tell, but they will definitely have got older, so the triangle will become steeper and there'll be more old people because medical care has increased. The next question asks you to describe potential economic and social problems. Economic problems are going to be the fact that we've got a lot more people, so there's going to be a higher demand for resources and food and water. Also, if we do get more old people, then we're going to have to keep those old people in terms of looking after them when they're old. Social problems, again, overcrowding, and we all have probably seen Slumdog Millionaire with lots of people going to the city and not having enough houses, so they end up living in slums. Not enough education and healthcare for everyone are also social problems, so people's standard of life isn't as good. Explaining the political consequences of ageing population. This really is thinking about the fact that if we've got more old people, they are not paying taxes and contributing to the economy. They're taking from the economy, not in a bad way, but because they have retired, they're taking their pensions, they need looking after more because they're more likely to get ill because they're older. So the economic problems, we've got less people putting into the pot, paying tax. We call these the economically active between about 18 and 65. If there are less people in that zone than there are in the economically active area than there are old and children, then the country's going to have problems because there's not as many. There's more people to support than there is supporting. Hope that's clear. Next question. People did fairly well about the one-child policy. They knew that it was restricting it to only having one child. The success of the policy, yes, that it has decreased the population, or it's not decreased the population, but it's slowed down the growth. How was the policy enforced? Well, that was financial benefits for the first child, so free education, free healthcare, maternity pay, and then disadvantages or disincentives if you had a second. So they fined you, they took your cattle away from you, they made you pay back everything for the first child. Also, they had lots of propaganda, advertising, encouraging people to do it. So with posters and TV commercials, and also they employed family planning officers who would go around and encourage people to only have one child or to have late abortions if they were planning to have a second. So a lot of peer pressure as well. What changes did they make? They did become lax in the countryside because they realised that it was a real big change for people. And so some people who had their own farms, etc., were allowed a second child, or at least they turned a blind eye. And a lot of you have said here that nowadays, if you are an only child and your partner is an only child, you're allowed to have 2 children. The next question moved on to migration. If you notice, we've moved from 8 to 9. A lot of people thought, because it was under the China question, that it was asking about migration in China and why people want to migrate out. That wasn't exactly what it was about. It was about general migration. So good answers here would talk about push and pull factors. And you might give examples of people might migrate pull factors because of better jobs, better education, better prospects. They might be forced away because of war, famine, disease, and that would be push factors. And you might want to give some examples. The difference here between internal and external migration: internal is within a country, external is outside. Economic migrant, somebody that wants to move because of the money, good example there. Then it came on and asked you to talk about refugees, asylum seekers and illegal migrants. This has got it perfectly right here. Refugee is people that's forced to move from a country and have been accepted into the host country, so they are allowed legally to stay. Asylum seekers, seeker being the key word, they again are leaving for seeking asylum because things are bad in their own country, but they are still waiting to be accepted in a country. And an illegal migrant is somebody who hasn't gone through the official channels and they have essentially moved to an area illegally. Final question here asks back about the demographic transition model, and it asks about how it might affect the UK policies if we were in stage 5. So stage 5 is when you've got a decreasing population because your death rate is higher than your birth rate. Basically, people aren't having enough children. So how might that affect our population policies? Well, first of all, we might have to start encouraging people to have more children. Otherwise, we're going to end up with not enough economically active people. So we could give people more maternity pay. We could make more free childcare places. But also, the big thing here really is we might want to be more lax with our rules for migration and get more people coming into our country, especially workers, who can fill up that middle section, the economically active, pay their taxes and provide for our children and our old people. So migration might be a solution as well. Now, hopefully that's helped you to go through the assessment. What I'd really like you to do is I'd like you to watch this video again and add to your answers, develop it so that you can get a really good solid understanding of what this is. Do that in a different colour pen and I'll be able to see the changes that you've made. I hope that helps.